Welcome back to this episode of Beyond the Balance Sheet. I'm Katie Collin, and today's episode is going to be a little bit different. I'm absolutely thrilled to be joined by Kate Hayward, who is the Managing Director of Xero UK. Kate's at the forefront of all the exciting conversations about the future of the profession, digital intervention, AI, and of course, small businesses and the challenges that they face. She has extensive experience in terms of developing small businesses and working with Xero. And as Xero Platinum partners at Ramsay Brown, we're really thrilled to be able to have this conversation today. Thank you, Kate, for joining me. So, Managing Director of Xero UK, obviously in a leadership role, been involved in Xero. Let's just take a step back and it'd be great to hear a bit about your experience and how you kind of got to that position.
Way back when, I actually did a biology degree and then decided that I didn't want to spend my life in research or labs. And so did a graduate scheme, did my chartered accountancy with Ernst & Young. And so from there, I grew a love for debits and credits. I didn't on my first day when I was at college thinking, what are all these people talking about? It's like double Dutch. But from there, I actually meandered my way through. I didn't do more traditional accountancy. I did a lot of M&A, financial due diligence, strategy and ops consulting. So I was in London doing that for many different businesses. Then was working too hard and playing too hard in London, I would say. My brother lived in Australia. I was on the Northern Line and he was on the Manly Fast Ferry. Okay. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to go over there and give that a go. So moved to Australia for a couple of years. And that's where the connection into Xero started. And met someone that was a huge backer of me and my career and my ability and pulled me into Xero when I came back to the UK. But yeah, started in strategy and ops, even in Xero. And then 7 years later, I'm now the MD for Xero UK.
Amazing. So the Northern Line didn't keep you...
No, the sweaty Northern Line. I'm quite short for those that don't know. I'm 5'2", so it means that I'm at the perfect armpit height.
Okay, all right. It's interesting moving to Australia. So obviously you decided to go into the profession.
Yes.
Just curious how you went from biology to accountancy.
I think there's lots of similarities to it. If you think about any type of science, you have a problem, you have a hypothesis, you do experiments, you look at data, you look at a lot of qualitative inputs and data, you come up to a conclusion, you have a report, and you go back. So the skill set of problem solving, of being quite analytical from science stood me in good stead, but I was looking for something a little bit more robust, probably is what I could say. My dad said to me once, well, he said to me when I was younger, there's two guarantees in life, Kate, death and taxes. And coming from a family where he was a sole trade, he worked on his own, I wanted a job that I knew there was sustainability as well. And so I thought, skill set and accounting, let's give this a go.
Interesting. It's very similar to kind of how I fell into it as well, and having that experience and actually ended up really enjoying it. And
Yes, the same. People think, I mean, we've spoken about this before, but that it's not a sexy profession. I actually think it's a brilliant profession, and you learn so much about business, you learn so much about people, you learn so much about the community that I've loved it as a career choice.
And I think you said something really interesting about someone who really backed your career. Obviously now you're in kind of the forefront, but I think mentorship is something that's so important for people when they're building their career. What's your experience been of that? And obviously that's led you on this path to where you are now.
100%. There's many people, but there was two stand-up people in my career that I genuinely don't think I would be here without them. The first one was actually both started in Australia, but she brought me I was working at Deloitte in strategy and operations consulting, and she just took me under her wing, and she obviously saw something in me, and I was eager and keen, and she just backed me. And it's as simple as that, but she wasn't nice, as in she was lovely, but I would term it as radical candor, and she kept pushing and wanted me to be my best self, and I am forever grateful for her. And then the second one was someone that brought me into Xero, who again just really believed in me. And it was actually at a point where I said to him, that's quite a big role. I want to start a family. And his response was, and? And it's hilarious that I just thought that the two couldn't be brought together. I couldn't have a family and a big role. And he just didn't believe in that. And I think without his confidence and his support, I think I would have had a lot of either imposter syndrome or just beliefs that weren't correct.
Amazing. And I think, do you think having a female role model has been very influential for you? And I think sometimes maybe, I mean, certainly when I was training, I didn't see a lot of that. And luckily, as my career progressed, I got to meet more and more of these amazing women who, again, similarly revolutionised my career and my life. Do you think that was something that the fact that you had a kind of a strong female mentor?
Especially, so the second one was a male, but the first one being a female, especially in Big Four, I started in M&A and I was in project rooms and I was probably the only female. Yeah. And I think you always, if you don't see it, you don't believe you can be there. And I think having that role model is so important. And seeing her, I think what was so important as well, I was growing up. There were women around, but there were women that acted like men. And I think what she did for me was you 100% can be yourself, be your authentic self. You don't need to mirror a man's way of doing things to actually be successful. And without seeing her do that, I don't think I would have been as comfortable in my own skin at work as I am now.
And a very good lesson for me as well, I think I should take. And it is interesting because I think certainly in the profession, we've always historically seen it's been quite a male-dominated profession. I think that is shifting over time. Yes. Well, we could talk about that for hours, which don't worry, we won't get into now. But from your experience now, so obviously you joined Xero. Yeah. And what role were you in at Xero when you joined, and how did you get to where you are now?
So I actually started in a global strategy role. So I started at the point where we were going from founder-led to CEO-led. And so the strategy was really interesting when you go through that transition where the founder's like, this is what we need to do, and everyone goes to CEO. Actually, it's a lot more corporate strategy as the company's growing. I did that role global and then focused on UK and EMEA at the time. But what was interesting is, and I think it goes back to some of my accounting kind of experience, I wanted to get into it. I wanted to see the numbers move, make something happen. So I actually then took on an operational role and I loved it. I realised that I'm an operator and I love the systems thinking and seeing how the inputs and the outputs and bringing it all together and moving forward with a great team for great customers. So yeah, became an operator. And then from there, just gradually took on more responsibility of the whole business from a product, tech, go-to-market, sales, marketing portfolio.
Wow. And I think you said about having the team behind you. I think that's so important, isn't it, in terms of how you grow. Is there anything that you've sort of learned on that journey in terms of the leadership journey that you think is like a really good piece of advice that you'd want to pass on to someone you're mentoring?
There's two bits that I always think, lessons I learned early on in my leadership career. One, I think a leader should be consistent. How many times have you worked for someone where you worry more about what they're going to say or how they're going to react than actually solving a problem or creating an opportunity? And so one thing I try and do is everyone knows who I am. Everyone knows how I'm going to show up and how I am. So they don't need to worry about that. I am who I am. I'll always interact in the same way. It takes away all of that emotion that doesn't actually serve anyone well. So consistency for me, that doesn't mean that some meetings aren't really hard on problems and we're trying to do like challenge ourselves, but it just means that they know who I am. And then the second bit is what I would call radical candor, or I'm known for tough on problems, nice on people. I think sometimes when you're first in leadership, making tough calls is really hard, and it is hard. But I think you have to learn to look at all of the different lenses and is it right for other people? Is it right for the business? And yeah, making tougher calls early on. Everyone has that instinct. I think you all know when you've got that niggling feeling where you need to make a tough decision, whether that's stopping a project that everyone cares about or the right person's in the wrong role or et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I think they're my two, consistency and then tough on problems, nice on people.
And you mentioned earlier about the imposter syndrome, which I think we probably all have sitting in there. But I think that is the factor of like, it's sometimes the tough decisions are hard because we've got that sort of imposter sitting in there saying, you know, don't do that, or do I really know what I'm doing? But actually having the confidence, and I suppose going back to kind of your being mentored yourself to be able to be confident in yourself is so important.
Sometimes, well, throughout my career, I've often been the youngest person sitting around senior rooms. And I think being a woman and then being younger than everyone else, you're kind of double-edged of imposter syndrome. And so you do have to think, okay, take that. There's always someone on my shoulder. Take that person off your shoulder, because actually you have a right to be here if you've got an opinion and it's well backed. But again, I think what I would say to anyone feeling like that, the people around you should lift you up, not pull you down. And if you're constantly in an environment where you feel like you're being pulled down, it's okay to not be in that environment. Yeah. And again, but that takes confidence, and that takes knowing who you are and being comfortable in your own skin, which doesn't happen overnight.
No, but I think it's again about that environment. If you're around the right people and having the strong team and people that can mentor you, that's kind of really, really important. Interesting you said about consistency. The first thing that jumped into my head was obviously our clients are medical. Yes. And one of the things that they struggle with is the lack of consistency we have in leadership in terms of in the health sector.
Yes.
Because the health sector is very topical at the moment, constantly changing.
Yes.
And actually you can see that cascading down, that lack of consistency cascades down into that kind of quite uncertainty and talking about solving the problem. What we end up is trying to sort of deal with things in a firefighting way rather than looking at the root cause. So it's kind of pervasive everywhere. So
100%.
I really like that consistency. So you're obviously now at Xero, MD, and we're platinum partners of Xero. We are Xero obsessive. Anyone who's a client knows that. I'm always banging on about it. We use it for all of our accounts. It's great software. What is it about Xero, I suppose, that drew you to it and kind of engaged you as a business?
I always say that I think I found my perfect sweet spot. So I alluded to earlier, my dad was a chippy or a carpenter, and I saw his ups and downs of not having cash. Essentially, sometimes he had jobs, sometimes he didn't. There's over 5.7 million small businesses in the UK. We're a nation of small businesses. So that's one bit that my brother's now a small business owner. He's in Australia, so luckily he can't ask me to do his accounts, because I think it would cause family feuds.
But he can use Xero.
He is a Xero user too. He does give me product feedback that I pass on. So small businesses are just something deeply rooted in who I am. I'm an accountant. I was at accounting software, and I love technology. And I think the three pillars of those together, there's something special about Xero that everyone says about culture, and it's the taglines and it's but you speak to we call ourselves Xeros. You speak to anyone, and we show up for our small businesses, and we show up for accountants and bookkeepers. And I think it's so tangible that I will go to the local coffee shop where Winchester Coffee Roasters, I love your coffee, and you work out they're a Xero customer, and then you get speaking to them and they're like, yeah, I can now see that, like, my profit and loss. And then you talk to them, they're like, I didn't know what a profit and loss was, now I do. That value that you just know that you're providing is just so special. So that's why I'm still at Xero. I love Xero. I love what we do. And then the accounting and bookkeeping community, they're a really special group, and I love them, and their impact they have on small businesses. That's very rare, that you have that symbiotic relationship between two groups of people. So yeah, I just think it's a really special place to be in.
Yeah, I mean, our experience of it has always been really positive, and I think there's something about the Xeros, so we call them, that also because they are accountants as well, having kind of gone on both sides and understand what it is to be an accountant, but also and to be looking after clients and what your clients' needs are, I think is really, really important. You touched on two things that I want to talk about. So first, kind of talking about small businesses. You said 5.7 million. Yeah. Our clients mostly are small owner-managed businesses, GP practices. What are you seeing in the environment at the moment that small businesses are going through? What are kind of the core issues? I'm sure we could talk about them another time, but the kind of core issues and how Xero is approaching helping them.
I always say small businesses have a psyche of so much resilience that I think is always inspiring. So I always start there. But even now, I think small businesses on the whole are being a bit more cautious. And there's a little bit of stagnation because they're worried about, do I invest? Do I do this? Because the uncertainty is more than it's ever been. So some of the things we're seeing, obviously the increase in business rates, national insurance, all of the extra pressure of increased costs is hitting them. I spoke to a coffee shop lady, a Xero customer the other day, and she said, at the end of the day, there's only so much someone's willing to pay for a flat white. You're never going to pay £15 for a flat white. And so
unless it's really good.
Quadruple shot maybe. And so there's just this real pressure on their margins, which leads to cash flow. So the biggest conversation we're seeing is cash flow problems. And they're worried about cash flow, understanding money in and money out. So you would have seen one of the big things that we've been passionate about is late payments.
Yeah.
Actually, the late payment legislation going through, we were so happy about, because it is unapproved debt. Small business should be paid on time and tracking that. And so we're really, really grateful about that. But anything around cash flow is something that we are trying to help with and trying to support with. So that's one big area. The other one is AI. I think we're not going to have a conversation without AI coming up. And I think small businesses are time poor. And I think we're all on a learning journey with AI. And I think they're keen to get the benefits out of AI, but how they do it, what that looks like, is another topic or area that is an opportunity, but also causing them some worry at the moment, I would say. They're the two main ones. And then the last one is just, they still want to grow.
Yeah.
Small businesses want to grow. How do they get that help? How do they get that support? How do they think about access to capital, access to finance? That's still an area that comes up. So yeah, they're the three main topics many small businesses are talking to us about.
And cash flow, in the space that we're in is massive.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just massive. And one of the things we really liked was, with the business snapshot when that came out in Xero,
Yes.
And the analytics, is that you can then start to kind of build a cash flow. So we have so many GP practices saying, well, we need a cash flow forecast. And in that sector, it's very hard to do, because you often get retrospective payments and things get announced. But that really just helped give visibility, even just being able to have 90 days, what's coming up. I think that is so crucial. And of course, for most small businesses and for GP practices, they're general partnerships. So they're putting their own money on the line in the working capital, which they're paying tax on those profits, but they have to keep that money in the practice to keep it going.
Yeah.
So of course, they're not paid. Who's going to pay the staff?
And this is that, the cash. 2 in 5 small businesses don't know if they're profitable last month, and then many don't know their cash position, which is just, it's the other area that I don't know if you've seen that we're talking a lot about is financial literacy, for this reason of actually, how do we help small businesses have more informed conversations about their finances, understand their finances, so they feel more confident and in control. Like, some of this is complicated. We have 5.7 million small businesses, many sectors, many niches. They're all different. Yeah. And so actually it becomes really hard. I
get told a lot, and I know I've said this to you before, oh, well, I'm not a numbers person. So, I don't really understand the numbers. That's not really my thing. I'm a doctor. And I think it's very interesting that people say that, because we label ourselves as something. I'm not a numbers person. But actually, this is their business, and it's their livelihood effectively that they're putting into their business. It's their working capital. And I think you don't necessarily have to be a numbers person to understand what's happening in your practice or in your business. And I guess you must have seen a lot of that.
Yeah, 100%. I think this is, like, we're a nations of small business, and yet we're not taught to be numbers people, but you should be. And I think there's a real stigma. It's almost the great British public being, oh, I'm not a numbers person. But actually, it's people are scared by numbers. And I just think if we break down those barriers, and accountants and bookkeepers for me are fundamental in this, that having a small business, an accountant and bookkeeper, having a more informed conversation over the numbers. Imagine if 1% of small businesses were more profitable, or 1% less died every year. For the economy, for our children, for the communities, like, that is the aspiration that I think. What if we were all numbers people? Imagine a world where all small businesses were numbers people. I think they didn't go into it for the numbers, but that's where accountants and bookkeepers want to help, should help. I know, keen to help.
Yeah, I think explaining how things work, and it's making it accessible, isn't it? That's the, so you don't have to know all the ins and outs of the detailed tax calculations. We have a lot of clients who have annual allowance charges on their pensions, and that's a whole world of complexity. Not suggesting that they understand all of that, but our job as accountants, I think, is to educate our clients so they know what a profit and loss is. They know how much money they're making. To not know how much money you're making, or we have clients who call us up and say, well, we've got no money in the bank account, we don't know why. that's not a place that you want to be in.
And I find that really sad because the whole purpose of Xero was democratization of accounting and finance. That if you were a corporate, you'd have a finance function, you would know, they'd tell you how much was in the bank and your profit. The whole point was that there's a system where we're trying to make it as accessible for every small business to log on to Xero and see it, and then have a conversation with their accountant and bookkeeper. That should be the norm. I'm quite passionate that we should be raising the financial literacy bar for every small business.
So how do we do that?
So we are trying lots of different things to do that. We have Unlock Your Numbers, which is free financial literacy content for any small business across the UK. So any small business should be able to access that. All of our brilliant accounting and bookkeeping partners have actually signed up to be mentors as well for free to help them with that content. And then I'm hoping I am not allowed to say too much, and I am an oversharer, but we've been working with Small Business Britain on the Maple Review, and we're really hopeful soon that something will come out about how do we actually bring this down into education. So watch this space. I'm really hoping that there'll be something soon. But my ask of every small business out there, go to your accountant and bookkeeper and ask about your numbers. Be inquisitive, have a growth mindset, take away those barriers of I'm not a numbers person, and in the next 6 to 12 months, be a numbers person, even if it's some of the basics.
So it makes me think of a client that we had that were on Xero and didn't really feel that comfortable using it, didn't really know. And we spent a lot of time together going through, I was showing them all the reporting, we bespoke all their reporting, they look at it quarterly now, they're looking at all the different funding streams, where the costs are going out. They run their own Xero now. We have no involvement in it. In fact, they get upset if we make any year-end adjustments in Xero without telling them. But the way they've taken that and taken autonomy of that is great. It's fantastic for us because when we do the year-end accounts, we sort of spend 10 minutes looking at the numbers. They say, well, we already know what the numbers are. Let's talk about strategy. Let's talk about what's going to happen in the practice, what's happening with your list size. Let's talk about your tax planning. It's all those conversations. In a way, if clients take more involvement in the numbers, it's better for accountants because then they get to do all the really fun stuff of the advice.
It's such I call it a Marmite conversation of compliance versus advisory, which 20 years it's probably been going on in the accounting profession that you've been talking about this. But to your point that the role of an accountant and bookkeeper, you're experts in your field, but you have all of the context of that business where you can sit down and have really good strategic conversations, value-added conversations about different things. And I always say that recently I've gone to see a farmer in the Lake District and a farmer in Devon. Their P&Ls could look the same in Xero, but the context around them is so different. And so the accountant and bookkeeper of their context and their skill set and their experience, and the small business of their context and their skill set and that judgment, those pieces coming together, don't you want to be spending the conversation on time on that rather than, I'm not sure we quite match that in the ledger to this, and should it be coded here or here? Like don't get me wrong, that's imperative because without that, with shaky foundations, you can't do the great conversation. But yeah, I'm hopeful that more accountants and bookkeepers are excited by the opportunity.
Oh yeah. So you mentioned that kind of conflict between compliance and advice, and I actually think the two things obviously go together, compliance and advisory. Where do you see things go? And we'll talk a bit about AI in a minute, but in the profession, because it's funny, I think that the profession's changing, that really with AI and maybe not quite where we are now, but going forwards, the accountant's role is going to be around advisory, and that it's possible compliance almost will be all automated. And then, I also see people talking about things like, it's great, I never have to talk to a client. Everything's just automated and I can just look at spreadsheets all day, which is my worst nightmare. So not that I don't love spreadsheets, I do. that kind of advisory piece. I mean, do you think that accountants do need to sort of change their mindset a little bit, or...
I speak to accountants and bookkeepers all the time, and you're all so different. Genuinely, you're all so different. And I could give you 100 different views of what everyone thinks. I think my personal opinion is, even your example of compliance, when I speak to small businesses, they're not paying for the tax return to be done. They're paying for it to be right.
Yeah.
And so I think even if some of the tax return is automated, because actually it's very computational and the answer is always going to be the answer and that's the answer. Having someone talk to them about it and know that it's right is value. Like, it's just valuable. So I think even in that situation, there may be some very simple small businesses that maybe just want an automated response, but I don't see that for across all of them, even in the compliance world. If you go to the level advisory, I think what's exciting for me, again, I speak to bookkeepers and accountants that do spend a lot of time cleaning the books. What I'm excited about is if the cleaning of the books becomes 10% of the job, not 80% of the job, it frees up time. Then you can spend more time having those conversations. So I think it's less about if you don't do it, you've got no role. It's more, you're going to have potentially capacity to do it, so why not? Again, I go back to the whole reason at Xero we're here is to make life better for small businesses. So are many accountants and bookkeepers. Imagine, I mean, many businesses probably do a monthly business review. Imagine if you had enough time to do a monthly business review for every small business you served.
That would be amazing, yeah.
Can you imagine the impact that would have on a small business? That I just think that's the way that I look at it, rather than it changing for the negative. The opportunity to support small businesses expands. So that democratization of a finance function for a small business, for me, is opening up more and more, and that excites me.
And to your point about, you know, people don't pay for you to do the tax return, they pay for you to get it right. What we've noticed is that our clients don't even necessarily pay for us to get it right. The assumption is that it's right.
Yeah.
What they pay for us is then take you through it, but also give you the advice around, okay, well, this is what you're doing well.
Yes.
That's a bit hard to say that with tax, but as in this is where you could make things more efficient, or this is what's going to happen. And if you continue down this trajectory, this is what the tax bracket you're going to be. Yeah. And it's that piece we feel that shift. And we felt that for a while, and that's why we positioned ourselves to be very integrated with our clients, rather than just kind of a compliance function of, here are your accounts, you spent £10 more on postage and stationery, and we'll see you next year.
I think that one-time relationship, once-a-year relationship, isn't but I've never found that a nice. Again, from my dad, seeing his accountant once a year and never knowing throughout the year where he was and the stress that caused, I just don't think any small business should be left on their own to do that unless they want to. But I think the value an accountant or bookkeeper can have is so much more than that, and should be on a regular basis. So yeah,
absolutely. So we talked about saving time, and I think for small businesses, speaking as having been a business owner, time is, when you're a founder or a managing partner or whatever it might be, time is always completely limited. Yep. So we want to be as efficient as possible. You've mentioned AI. We can't not talk about AI. And I think Xero are probably leagues ahead in terms of how you've been looking at AI and integrating with AI. If we just sort of start on the bigger picture, you've talked about how you use AI to be efficient.
Yes.
I mean, what are your views on the profession and where maybe things haven't kind of gone to yet, or what we could be doing better in terms of how we're using it?
It's interesting. I think we went through the desktop to cloud transition, and on that, Xero were part of that journey, supporting accountants and bookkeepers through it. But what was interesting is you essentially took their desktop workflows and just stuck it on in the cloud.
Yeah.
They didn't actually think about changing workflows or optimizing from a blank sheet of paper. And so I think in an era of AI, it's that opportunity again to rethink what we're doing. And there's so many different use cases of AI. The way I think about it is, does every accountant and bookkeeper want to vibe code and build their own tech stack? Probably not. Is everyone I mean, the risk, the control, the thought, is there, Sukhinder, our CEO, uses this expression, we could all go and build our own houses, but do we?
Yeah.
No.
It'd definitely not be my skill set. No. I have to put that out there.
Yeah,
I'm very good at some things, but building, no.
No. And so actually there's non-builders, but you can still leverage AI. But the responsibility on you is to think about where and how to use AI in the best ways. So I think about, there are some jobs of an accountant and bookkeeper that 1 + 1 is always going to equal 2. So if an invoice says that the invoice is £20, the answer is that it's £20. So using AI to pull that information out and pulling it in your ledger, why wouldn't you do that? Why would you manually do it? Still lots of people manually keying, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
So I just think the opportunity for AI, there's some areas that it should just be. Then there's some other areas where it can support, but maybe not be 100%. It could be correct, but the judgment is needed around it. And I think that's the area where sometimes there's a lot of hype in the industry about what it can and can't do. But to your point about the judgment, about the tax, that's where the beauty is with AI and judgment that comes together, and that I'm not sure we've really captured that in the profession of what that actually looks like yet. And I don't think that's anyone's fault. I just think we're early on in actually where this is.
And I don't think it is just the profession, actually. I think, where we see other people using AI. So, I told you that we see people putting things into AI and getting sort of accounting advice or tax advice. That's not necessarily what it's good for doing, as it doesn't understand the context and the specific client. And I know my partner had this where someone said, ChatGPT has given me this amazing tax structure, but he'd forgot to mention that, by the way, the shareholder was actually his mother and this, and this, and it was actually a close company, and actually it would have been tax evasion. It's the long and short of it. So, sorry, ChatGPT, that wasn't quite the right answer. But of course, because the individual hadn't put the context in, ChatGPT, worked on what it had. And I think it's that piece of what you put into it is what you get out, and we've talked about this before as well. It's just the same as data entry, right? When if you put rubbish in, you get rubbish out. To your point about keying data and the basics being right, I think it's so important when we're using AI of how we use it and what we use it for. Talk a bit about Xero, because you've done some really cool stuff with AI.
To that point, the bit that you're saying there about the context is king for large language models. That the thing in Xero that we've got, which we are using, is we have an operating system at Xero. It's over 20 years. And do you know what we're obsessed with? Accounting workflows. So
accountants are hard.
We're obsessed with that workflow, that knowledge. And so all of that context that we have, that's anonymized, we don't train our models on client data, but that is what we feed the context to make sure that we keep pointing and pointing and pointing, so that your example there is AI should, when you use AI in Xero, the accuracy should be there to make sure that it's contextualized with accounting knowledge, with bank feeds, tax rolls, regulation, HMRC, all of that. So I think that's the bit that we're trying to do. So one of the exciting things I think is getting a lot of interest is we launched Xero Force. This is, you're seeing a lot in other large language models. You can build your own workflows. And you don't need to, I think the barriers to entry here are so low that you can use natural language. So you don't need to be a coder.
Yeah.
That's what's exciting for me about Xero Force, that actually you can use Xero's financial context that you trust, that does know how to work out a tax return, or does know how to work out VAT, or does know all of the financial workflows that we've spent years, but you can bring in context from other places that you wish to and build your own workflow. There will be we're in early alpha, so many people won't have seen it yet, but that is why we're trying to do that, to make sure that the financial context that you can't get wrong, but you can leverage AI in other ways. So the context of your firm. So you always write emails in this way. It should always be designed in this way. You always want your SLAs to be like that. All of that context can come into Xero. So that's exciting. Then you would have seen on the other side, we launched Jax, Just Ask Xero. So that was our early AI. And we said early on, we think insights from Xero should be wherever you are, whether it's email or WhatsApp. So having the Claude connector to be able to get Xero information surfaced in Claude is just part of that strategy, that we want to be wherever the client is or the accountant is. So they're the two kind of outside broader AI pieces. But then there's so much more exciting things that we're doing. I talk about document capture. Smart document capture is part of this.
That's amazing.
That one for me is like pure Xero through and through. We know how important the data is. Why wouldn't we be using AI to get the data in? So more to come on that for those who are coming to XeroCon.
Very excited. I am coming to XeroCon, so that's good. For me, that's one of the fundamentals of where we see a lot of our clients. The people who are doing a lot of the time doing the books and records they're not bookkeepers. No. They're practice managers, or even, dare I say it, the partners who are doing it in their spare time between seeing patients.
Yes.
Or, the consultants who are running their own private practice or whatever it might be. That's so much time that they're spending and so prone to error.
Correct.
And actually, to have that tool and have it and know that it all feeds through and that it can learn, to me, it's a no-brainer.
Well, and that's the bit, the automation of that workflow where data comes in, it goes through to the ledger, it matches to your bank. That piece, if you can get that more automated, happening when you sleep, that's the bit for me that you wake up and it's anomaly detection. Like you're doing that 10%, not doing the 90%. And I think that's the dream for all of us.
Yeah, and I think that also facilitates accountants and bookkeepers to spend more time with their clients to say, okay, this is what you need to be looking at now. This is what a profit and loss looks like, and doing that education piece.
Yes.
Because that's still important as well to understand it.
Well, and the fact if you haven't got up-to-date information and they're asking you for a cash flow, one of the biggest
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? One of the biggest things that the worries that I have is sometimes small businesses might be asking other platforms for insights into their finances, and yet their books aren't up to date. So the insights they're getting actually are out of date. And so there is this healthy tension that we need to make sure everyone's across, that in order to get always on insights, you need your information to be up to date. And I think that bit, just connecting those dots, is really important.
Yeah, I had a client who kept asking me to work out how much money they could draw down. And I said, well, we need to do the accounts to know what your current account is, and so we can do the equalisation. And so, well, can't you just work it out? And it's like, well, you don't have any accounts because you've not put anything into Xero, so you can't. I could give you a number, but
I'm not a mind reader.
Psychic. Yeah. So I think that's the really important piece. Now, flipping on the other side, some skeptics would say, well, hold on, if we're using data capture tools and we're automating all this process, are we not allowing, let's say, our trainees who are coming up to do that kind of basic work, I say basic, or the fundamental work that then teaches them how to do the bits later on? Do you see that as a threat, potentially?
It's a really interesting one. So I learnt by osmosis, I say. Like, I did paper accounts, I did all of it. And then in meetings, listening to partners, I just think we need to rethink how we train. So I think you now would go in and look at a set of accounts, or you'd look at something and you would sniff test and you would spot. How do you spot it? And I think we just need to flip how we teach them on that. Okay, go in and what looks funny? Why does it look funny? And be able to trace back. I also think there's great platforms out there where you can do case studies, you can do simulations, where you still get that bottom up grounded. You could still do the manual work in these software if you want to, but it doesn't need to be for everything. It should be a training, not for the norm. So I think it's a little bit of we just need to take the responsibility, rethink it, is what I think. But I also think you as a junior, imagine how more exciting the profession could be. Like, immediately you get to have client conversations and learn and listen, because you don't have to spend the 40 hours a week doing the coding. They're also just not going to do the coding. Graduates, they'll be like, I'm just going to use a tool to do that. Yeah. So I just think there's this new rebalancing of what younger generations want from work, what is available to them. I think some of the professional bodies as well, they've done tests of actually, do you still get the same critical financial acumen by not doing it? And the answer was yes. So I just think we just need to catch up. Yeah, I think that's really crucial. We're still getting the same kind of level of output. And I know we've both talked about the kind of the profession and maybe the view of being an accountant, or the public perception of being an accountant versus the reality, because obviously we both know it's deeply exciting and very, very cool. But actually, I think it is a really exciting opportunity, because the parts that are really interesting, like going and seeing all these different businesses and getting to know your clients. I trained at a general firm, actually H.W. Fisher, and one of the things I loved was I went to a different business every week, and I remember going to an art gallery and they were showing me around all the artwork and the factory of where they keep everything and how they ship things out. So you can still do all those bits, but actually using kind of the AI and the digital tools behind you to be able to do the things you want to do. What I think is interesting about that is I 100% agree. So you learn about business. You don't just learn about numbers. And people often say to me now, what do you think your secret power is at Xero in your MD role? And I often say I understand the business. I understand the numbers and I understand the commercial business. And I've learned from different sectors, different sizes of businesses throughout my career. That means I'm dangerous, because you can take learnings from everywhere else, but you deeply understand the numbers. Every business makes money and it's got commercial drivers. There's a driver tree, like that's what I always go back to. And I think that for whatever you decide to do in a career, having that grounding is really, really important. I spoke to a young lady yesterday that's just out of university, and I gave her this advice. I was like, if you're not sure what to do, there's something that will always stand you in good stead, and having a financial background is brilliant.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I think I think it is a sexy career. I think it is. It builds great capabilities, both financially and people skills. So yeah,
I think to your point about going back where we talked about being numbers people or not being numbers people, is actually understanding a business. The numbers are a part of a business, but being an accountant doesn't just mean you're a numbers person. I know whenever I do a kid's birthday party or something, I get given the spreadsheet saying you're the accountant. Although I do like an Excel formula, I have to say. I don't know, but actually, you're right. It's not, well, you do the numbers, you're the accountant, and we don't because we're the business owner. You're right. It's understanding the whole context and knowing the business and then using the skills that you have. That's the added value.
And even I think you look at marketing functions now and how data driven and how numbers they are. It's not as though the finance director or the numbers person is the only person that's responsible. Every single role within a business has to be a numbers person. So I just think the overlap is more than ever.
And what one last piece of advice would you give to A, the small business owners out there, and B, the accountants and bookkeepers?
The small business owners out there, keep doing what you're doing, be resilient, but be a numbers person. So learn one new bit of financial education, financial piece of information about your business that you didn't know. And if you are stuck, ask your accountant or bookkeeper. To the accountants and bookkeepers, I see this as an opportunity to rethink what you could do and what's possible, have a growth mindset and think positively about it, because you as a profession, you're incredible individuals. You provide so much value to small businesses, the community and the economy. So take it on and go for it.
Well, I can't top that. What a great note to end on. Thank you so much for your time, Kate. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. I wish we could talk, but it's been a real privilege. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.